Very great day for the semiconductor and AI space. We can see Nvidia was green, not by much, but partners and companies that Nvidia has invested in have gone up a nice amount. We can see Nebius was up roughly 8.9% on the day. CoreWeave destroying the market, up roughly 15%. I just don't know how this thing keeps going and going. And Navitas was up roughly 9.4%. Also, AMD, not Nvidia related, but AMD was up roughly 4.7%, as there were some news that we talked about in yesterday's episode and some excitement coming on right now. So we got a lot to cover. We also have some US and China trade talks updates that I think AI and semiconductor investors are not going to want to miss. So let's get started.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
So the first topic is Trump gives U.S. negotiators room to lift export controls on China. And for those that are not familiar, today we did have a U.S. and China meeting. I'll talk a little bit about that later on throughout this episode, but things are going really well. And ahead of that meeting, Trump told Secretary Scott that, hey, if you need to use some of these tools and export restrictions that we just put on as a negotiating tool, you have kind of like the green light to do it. Now, obviously, a lot of investors got pretty excited, especially for Nvidia, right? I mean, because obviously we know one of the big techs that is restricted in China right now is AI chips. So I think right now for Nvidia, this is the exciting part. About 2-3 weeks ago, the Chinese market was a potential headwind for Nvidia. What happens when it gets shut off? How is this going to impact revenue? How is this going to impact all this and all that? Now that it has happened, this is a market that's gone pretty much from Nvidia. So now any Chinese news in the AI space is actually more of a tailwind, especially if that ever gets turned back on. I do believe this could be very bullish for Nvidia. Now, I do want to say the current administration and any administration is always gonna hopefully put US national security on top of the line. So while I don't see Nvidia's kind of H100 or B200 or Blackwell top of the line chips being used as a trading mechanism, I do believe the weaker down versions like the H20, the B30, or whatever they're going to call it, will be used as a trading mechanism for the US government, right? I also don't think this is the first move that we're going to see. If we do see some chip export restrictions easing, the one that recently happened were on EDAs, and that's software that is used on chip development. So companies like Synopsys and Cadence were impacted a bit there. So if I usually think when it deals with export restrictions, it's last one in, first one out. So if we start to see use the chip export restrictions as a trading mechanism, I would expect Synopsys and Cadence products to be lifted first and then kind of go down the list, right? So this could be bullish, but again, the AI market for China, for Nvidia, has now become a potential tailwind if it gets turned back on. Now, we also did see some other things. So Jensen was at a London Tech week today, and the overall keynote with the UK Prime Minister. And Jensen mentioned that the UK has one of the richest AI communities of anywhere on the planet, the deepest thinkers, the best universities, and the third largest AI capital investment of anywhere in the world. I feel like Jensen is that playboy for countries that every time he goes to a country, he says the same thing. Oh, you guys are the best. You guys are the smartest. You guys are the most beautiful of all time. I find that funny, but obviously the UK, you have Cambridge, right? You have ARM-based, which is very strong engineering platform. So you do have a lot of great tech and a lot of great universities, but it's just so funny for him to say this all over every time he goes anywhere. So he does talk about kind of the AI market and how UK is investing in building AI labs there. The Prime Minister did announce a $1 billion in AI research compute by 2030, with investments commencing this year. Remember, this is now just a country investing about 1 billion euros. That's not a lot of money, but what we are going to see is more public and private companies are going to come out and start doing the same, right? I do believe this is a market right now that's going to be run and invested mainly by by not the governments themselves, but those enterprises that are working with the governments. So a few things that they mentioned, for example, was Sweden outside of UK also is investing dramatically. Germany and France also investing dramatically. We also see Nvidia is going to have their GTC Paris this upcoming Wednesday at 11 a.m. CEST. That's going to be the keynote. Unfortunately, is about 4 a.m. my time, so I'm not going to be able to record. But they do expect news on NVIDIA's Blackwell, strong sovereign AI initiatives, new regional partnerships, and how European innovators are turning intent into infrastructure with NVIDIA. Staying here in the UK, we actually did see some announcements of some AI factories, which I do believe is going to be one of the reasons Nebius did have a nice day. We can see that Nscale announced at London Tech Week its commitment to deploy UK AI infrastructure with 10,000 NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs by the end of 2026. And cloud provider Nebius is continuing the region's momentum with the launch of its first AI factory in the UK. It announced it's bringing 4,000 NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs online. Now, Nebius reacted very positive to this. The stock was up nearly 9% with a market cap of roughly $12.5 billion. Now, Nebius gave us a little bit more of a breakdown. So they did have a press release. So Nebius launches in the UK. We are expanding Britain's AI infrastructure with NVIDIA Blackwell Ultra. So we can see they're not going to build this on the current Blackwell architecture. It's going to be on the Blackwell Ultra. They also mentioned that as an early adopter of NVIDIA's Blackwell Ultra platform, they will provide thousands of these GPUs in the UK. The first deployment is expected to be operational during Q4 of 2025. We'll be scaling from there. So I wouldn't say that is actually very bullish for me, as it seems like we're expected to get a nice amount of ramp production of Blackwell Ultra by Q4 already. We already kind of learned from NVIDIA's latest earnings that they're actually going to start shipping a little bit in Q2, but we're going to start to see some ramping up through Q3. But by Q4, and remember, it takes some time for these companies to build and stand up these systems. So if Nebius is expected to build this by Q4, you're most likely expecting to get these chips by Q3, early Q4, the latest, right? Depending on how quickly they can build some of these systems. So I think that's actually very, very bullish for Nebius. And obviously, I think for NVIDIA, the Blackwell platform, the Blackwell Ultra, is going to demolish. Unfortunately, the Blackwell was a bit of delay, but the Blackwell Ultra is going to come in full swinging. We also did see that with the additional of the UK, Nebius will operate 7 AI clusters in 6 countries across Europe, the US, and the Middle East, making the company one of the largest independent AI infrastructure builders globally. And they also mentioned that the company is the first reference platform NVIDIA cloud partner headquartered in Europe and an early adopter of NVIDIA's next generation Blackwell Ultra. And here they kind of give us some of the global AI infrastructure footprint. They have some in Kansas City, here in New Jersey, in Iceland, in Finland, the one that they just announced in United Kingdom, in France, and in Israel. So while I am not a shareholder of Nebius, it kind of does share somewhat of the similar thesis that I had when I first invested in CoreWeave. Again, I've talked about CoreWeave in the past. I'm not buying at these levels, but I still believe there is this bullish sentiment. Now, Nebius is kind of sitting at a market cap of $12.5 billion, where CoreWeave is at a market cap of $77 billion. Many are expecting, right, Nebius to kind of follow with the CoreWeave market. Obviously, a big difference in revenue here. So there is a reason for the difference in price performance. I do believe in revenue, there's almost about a 10x difference. So you would expect at least maybe a 10x difference in market cap as well. Now, it also depends on how you value, right? Who has better margins, who has better opportunities. But Nebius is definitely a growing player. And what I would say is a very bullish case for them is actually the European market, right? It does seem like they are trying to become that strong player in Europe and that part of the world, where maybe CoreWeave is trying to become that guy for here in the United States. Eventually, we can see they're going to start combating each other in various industries, but there is plenty of room with the AI demand that we're seeing for both. So I'm not purchasing any of these two right now, but I definitely see this excitement. And again, I got really excited to see the Blackwell Ultra be announced, to really see some movement, I guess, some ramp production in Q3. Now, CoreWeave stock was up roughly 15.6% today. I think this is wild because there was actually no real news for CoreWeave. CoreWeave, unfortunately, has really become, I believe, kind of more of just like a trade momentum. I don't want to call it a meme stock because there's some truth behind CoreWeave, right? I've talked about it. I've talked about my bullish case, but at these price points, it has not become in my favor. I continue to dollar cost average out, so it means I continue to sell every time we get to some really nice prices. And for me, I've made nice amount of money to form CoreWeave. Again, I'm not buying. I feel like every video I talk about CoreWeave is like, Jose, are you going to buy? I'm not buying at any at these price points. I'm not going to sell my full position, but I don't mind dollar cost averaging and raking in. From now, it's already a four bagger for me in just a little bit over a month. Now, another one that unfortunately didn't really have much news, but the market is moving is Navitas Semiconductor. We know it from the partnership with Nvidia. I used to talk about this maybe in a little bit too bearish light a few weeks ago, but I mentioned I recently read their presentation that they did at an analyst event, and I found it pretty interesting. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to buy Navitas, but I'm not going to be as bearish as I was before. So also, if you want to support the channel, pretty much make sure to hit the thumbs up, the subscribe button. I'm trying to hit 75,000 subs by the end of the year. Check out my free semiconductor newsletter, whatthechip.happened.com. And this newsletter, I talked about Nvidia, I talked about Navitas, I talked about Lam Research, and some other ones that just came out today. So make sure to check that out, completely free. And I also have some pinned comments for some special offers, finchat.io/Jose or fool.com/Jose. So definitely check those two out below. Now, kind of going back to Navitas, I mean, Navitas has seen two main things. First was obviously that Nvidia partnership. The second is there are seeing a few analysts kind of increase the price target. We did see an analyst kind of increase the price target to about $6 recently. $1.3 billion. Obviously, if this benefits dramatically from an Nvidia partnership in the next year or so, $1.3 billion could seem very cheap. Now, with companies this small, I expect heavy volatility. I really do. So I've added Navitas on my watch list, and if we ever do see a crazy reaction after our reaction to the stock negatively, I think I might want to build a position. But I'm not chasing. I have plenty of room in the semiconductor companies. I just have plenty of wins with companies like CoreWeave as well that I'm not too worried about missing out on this one. If I was, maybe I would do kind of dollar cost averaging. Now, the next company I want to take a closer look at is Advanced Micro Devices, AMD. AMD was up roughly 4.7%. So we did kind of have a few price target increases. For example, Citigroup upgrades ahead of advancing AI events, which is this Thursday. And I do believe there was another analyst, if we kind of look here, there was another analyst that did upgrade their price target as well. Now, the price targets were around like 120. It was nothing crazy, but they seem to be very bullish on this AI event. I'm actually very bullish for this event, but I tend to not buy before an event, as if they under deliver, it can create some negative sentiment towards the stock. So if I'm just expecting for a quick buck, the overall AMD event is pretty much a coin flip. Long term, I do believe this company can easily double, maybe even triple within the next 5 years. Maybe that's another video idea where AMD could be 5 years from now. But I am very bullish on this company within the next 5 years in general. The other thing is AMD, as we talked about it yesterday, they did announce a new chip that is going to be used in the Xbox gaming platform handheld device. So there is some momentum there, but I do believe most of the momentum is due to the AI price target and also due to the AI event. Now, the next thing that we see here is OpenAI hits $10 billion in annual recurring revenue, fueled by ChatGPT's growth. And this is massive because I believe just a year ago, it was around $3.3 billion, or OpenAI was last year was around $5.5 billion. So massive growth there. And this is still right now, right? We're still not at the end of the year. So there is massive growth here. This is kind of just telling us that there's massive demand for AI solutions right now, even just large language models, which everybody's saying, hey, why invest in something like that? But these large language models are running behind some form of AI chips for both training and, more importantly, for inferencing. So news like this of OpenAI hitting some massive new levels of revenue, and continuing to grow can be seen as a nice bullish case for AMD, Nvidia, and all these other AI chip players and AI infrastructure player and cloud service providers. Right. We also know that companies like Oracle and Microsoft do their workloads on the cloud, so they can benefit from that dramatically. Now, I want to kind of end off with some of the most recent news. Trump did tell reporters that they are doing well with China talks. Like I mentioned earlier in this episode, Chinese talks with the US are happening right now in forms of trade discussions. He mentions he's only getting good reports right now. Scott, Treasury Secretary, also told reporters in London that they had a good meeting and called the discussion fruitful. So there is some bullish sentiment for this. Obviously, the Chinese market is very important for the AI, for the semiconductor space in general, because a lot of the finished goods get manufactured around that part of the world. So that's all the updates I have. We did see a lot of price actions, and overall, pretty bullish in my opinion for the market right now. So take care, have a good day, and see you all next time.